Well, happy Monday. Welcome back. Let's talk Broncos. Bree Maestas, Joey Richards with the slow motion salute. We're starting earlier than previously advertised. So if you want to go ahead and get the word out, retweet the show, Zach Seegers. I know you're busy, but that's fine. Much like Mile High Mario was this week for score predictions, Zach Seegers has been suspended. That's what Victory Monday does to you. Listen, it shortens the reins on the emphasis of what you're going to accept in a program, but it also gives you just a nice little warm and fuzzy feeling as you start your week. So, Joey, I got to ask you, after the game that we witnessed on Sunday, how's your Victory Monday going?
Victory Monday is great. I mean, I'm a little less hyped than I was yesterday, but not very. A win's a win in my book. That's what I think. It's pulling me up is Zach Seeger's suspension. That's what's doing it for me right now.
That's just made it so much more tolerable.
So
The
much.
Muse is in the chat. Hey, Muse, how about being 23 minutes early? Stick that in your pipe and smoke it. He says, I know I'm getting, or they say, I don't know if you're here or she said, I know I'm getting a good meme clip today. Well, that's a lot of pressure. We'll see what I can do.
No, most definitely. Most definitely. It's going to happen every single show. When it's just me and one other person on here, I'm doing something ridiculous. I have to make up for the stats somehow. We are missing the stats. Joey Richards comes in with ridiculousness to make up for it. We have to find something there. We have about 40 minutes to cover here. Zach talks usually for about 30 of them. I need to figure out how to compensate for it.
Right.
Yeah.
And about 6 of those minutes are muted. So keep that in mind, Joey. You could just include a big blank in the middle to fill the gap. Paul Shatter said, liked and subscribed. Welcome, Paul, to Let's Talk Broncos and to the community. You're now a part of our very own little Let's Chat. Feel free to submit your thoughts and feelings about Sunday's game. I should be more animated. I'm just not. I'm just not in general as a person. But really excited to talk about the Broncos. And I wanted to start off, Joey, with the day in general. I'm going to cover the 4 Ds in this stock up, stock down program because the day was absolutely gorgeous. Fall temperatures, it was 70 degrees, the sun was shining, and the vibes were high. The throwback uniforms, the D logo is back for the Denver Broncos. And I've always been very skeptical that should be the full-time uniform and jersey for the Denver Broncos. I don't know if you can hear all the heavy metal music that's playing right now, Joey. Sorry for that. Okay, good. That's good. So you've got a lot of excitement there with the throwback jerseys and the wraps. It looked like an old school game because they brought back literally all of the graphics, the font, the colors. The stadium was robin's egg blue instead of the traditional navy blue. And the jerseys looked absolutely fantastic. And I've always been don't bring them back full time. I don't know how I can't look at that. So the day, the D logo. What are the other Ds? The defense. And then I'm going to talk about a little dust up that happened. So obviously the defense was extraordinary. Vance Joseph continues to light everything on fire in front of us to the best of the Denver Broncos and to optimism view of Broncos country. So we're excited for that. We'll talk about how his defense is really shaping the league now, because I would say Denver's the best defense that exists out there. And there's the stats to prove it. You'll have to wait till Zach Seegers is back to cover that. We'll cover it in its entirety for our bold prediction show this Wednesday. But then the dust up. Some would put that in the negative column if they think that was a bad thing to happen. I know last season there was a lot of conversation around maybe how it felt to see Sean Payton yelling at his quarterback. Well, this was a little bit different, Joey, because the back and forth is, I think, what changes the description of this dust up. So let's start D logos, uniforms. How'd you feel about them being back? Because I mean, they looked fantastic.
It was amazing. It was amazing, especially after that win. I don't even know how. It's really 4th D. It's a damn shame that they can't bring those back, Bree. Or they can bring them back, but it's only for such a short period of time. Honestly, it should be their full-time jersey. It really should be their full-time jersey. I know you'd probably get tired of it as it went along, or people would be less excited about it, which I think is the best argument I've heard of them not making it full-time. But I just would. I don't care. I like the new uniforms. I love the new version of the old uniforms. That's the best uniform maybe in the entire NFL. It's right up there with the Chargers throwback. Falcons throwbacks are really cool too. But it is right up there as the best uniform in the league. I'd bring that full time, Bree. Me personally, that's a great jersey. As fast as they can change it. I don't know if there's any rules on, hey, you set your new uniforms, you got to keep it for 5 years or something. I don't know. But as fast as I could, I'm making that my full-time jersey.
Yeah, or at least the main alternate. I don't know, Joey. That's my argument. My argument is it would lose kind of the shine from it if you had to see it all the time. But seeing them in person, I don't know. I might have changed my mind just a little bit, but also totally vibes based. That game was incredible. D Bronx, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I was worried that much like any other special event that's happened in recent memory, the Broncos find a way to shoot themselves in the foot. And the game started off so slowly that I thought that that was the inevitability of Sunday's game. I thought it was going to be a massacre, but I'm a little lingering in the PTSD realm, and not to make fun of that whatsoever, but I got the kicked puppy syndrome that I'm afraid the Broncos are going to let me down. That there's no actual thing as positive momentum, and that the minute I buy into this hope and predict them to win, that it's going to sucker punch me in the face. So I'm glad that that wasn't the case here. Absolutely stellar day vibes included, but Joey, the defense, we
So good.
it was so good, and there were moments in which I couldn't believe my eyes is what we were seeing. So a Patrick Surtain 100-yard house call is something I did not have on my bingo card, just specifically because quarterbacks, and we'll use that term lightly when we're talking about this Raiders team. Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell took some not so well calculated risks by throwing either in, around, or towards Patrick Surtain. Now, I want to point out that one of those interceptions didn't even seem as though it stated the physics. Like it didn't exist within the realm of what I think physics should exist on the football field, where he was able to turn his body and kind of come out of the woodwork and almost surprise everybody involved that he was able to get that pick. So we'll talk about Patrick Surtain. We'll also talk about Riley Moss's first career interception, which we've been waiting for. We've been talking about how important that was, and just being just having a lot of positivity towards Riley Moss, his tackling ability, his defense in general. Now you have a CB duo, which may be one of the more impressive in the
Yeah.
entirety of the league. You've got Patrick Surtain, Riley Moss. Talk to me a little bit about that first PS2 interception, because I'm going to say this and nobody's going to believe me, but I was sitting there and I said, "Wow, the Broncos need to turn over right here." And before I could even get it out of my mouth, Pat's got the ball in his hands. So, what was your reaction to that? How did it feel?
Well, Bree, it should have been your bold prediction. I'm joking, but shout out to Jay Money, who is in the chat sometimes. He got really close to his bold prediction when we were doing the bold prediction episode. He said that the quarterback would be benched and Riley Moss would get a pick six. It was the opposite. It was Patrick Surtain got a pick six. The quarterback was still benched. Good enough to get points in my book, I feel. But yeah, no, the defense was phenomenal. Bree, to this point, right? I think it's worth noting this was without Singleton or Baron Browning. Like you are versatile right now. Like you have depth pieces right now, and Justin Strnad, who looks pretty good. I'm not gonna overblow it and be like Justin Strnad's like the future of the Broncos or anything like that. No, but he's serviceable, and the defense is relying so much on their defensive line, right? Their edges and interior defensive line. Malcolm Roach had a great game. Zach Allen continues to look like one of the best interior defensive linemen in the entire league. Right now, he has more pressures than any other interior defensive lineman in the entire league. And then also the secondary. The reason you're able to throw so many blitzes at opposing teams is because you have a lot of faith in Patrick Surtain and Riley Moss. These guys are ballers. I even put the question on Twitter, Brie. I said the question no longer is if Riley Moss is a starting caliber cornerback. It's how good he actually is. Like that's the conversation that needs to happen now with Riley Moss. He's phenomenal. Huge stock up for Riley Moss and what he's done so far this season. If you cut out some of these flags, I mean, I'm really looking at Riley Moss. I'm not saying he's going to keep this up, but through the part of the season we are right now, this guy very obviously looks like a top 15 or so corner in the NFL. Based on what I saw this season, he's playing so good.
D-Bronx said, but I was told Vance Joseph was bad, question mark. Well, we were also told Riley Moss wasn't a starting caliber DB in the NFL. So it looks like that's looking a little bit different. But I do want to tie this into a little bit of a stock down that we both had with the defense and the offense being exceptionally slow to start the game. And there was an interesting conversation that perhaps the Broncos defense was planning for Davante Adams to play, and then were sort of thrown a wrench when he wasn't available. That changes your game plan. Does that, do you think, atone for a lot of the slowness on waiting for that to click for the Broncos? Because I do think both the defense and the offense were a little slow to start the game.
No, and I totally agree. The offense to this point, it's been slow to start games. The defense, I didn't know if that was exactly it. It just felt like the Broncos needed to pull their head out of their butt, if I'm being honest. During those first few drives, I didn't think what the Raiders were doing was sustainable. I don't think it was because of Davante Adams, because honestly, like that Brock Bowers touchdown to start the game, does anyone think that's like a sustainable way of scoring touchdowns? Like we're just going to throw jump balls and hope PJ Locke's legs break or whatever happened there? Like I just didn't see a very sustainable version of the Raiders offense. Honestly, the last drive where Patrick Surtain ended up having the pick six seemed like their most sustainable way. They had a huge run that got him there. Stuff like that happening. The other stuff, mixed tackles on Alexander Madison that broke, hey, it should be a 1 yard gain, but now it's a 9 yard gain. This is just the Broncos not playing great football to start the game. In my opinion, I had faith that the defense was going to pull it around because of that all the way through. Honestly, I think that's a really great cope. Who said it, Brand Jones? I think that's a really great cope. I just don't know if that's actually the truth. It just felt like the Broncos weren't playing up to their standards in that first part of the first part of the game, and Davante Adams just not being on the field helped them, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. I think there's a healthy dose of coping inside of all of that. But it looks like one of the LTB listeners said someone predicted Riley and PS2 would both have a pick. I remember that comment. And I also
Did
remember
you?
being like, oh, sure, wouldn't we love that? And so I want to give a shouts out. I think Muse believes it was Samuel Castro. So shouts out, kudos to you, Samuel, for
Oh
if that
yeah.
was your bold prediction. Congrats to you. I believe also Josh had that call for the interception, gets the quarterback benched, and I just want to say you guys are doing better than we are with our bold predictions. I think if we kept the score the entirety of this first quarter of the season. Joey, did you think we would be here as Denver Broncos fans heading into week 6? I did not. I didn't anticipate it. I anticipated a slow start, and that's what we got. I didn't anticipate it being convincing through week 5, that there was actual gelling of all of the units within the team. There's gelling within the quarterback and the head coach. And that was a question mark. We didn't know, we were being told as such. And I want to reference the dust up that happened because
Yeah.
when I first saw it, I was there in attendance, and also someone made a snide comment about, wow, the Broncos finally won with Bree in attendance. I'm not going to tell you my record, And I know that that's facilitated by Joey Richards talking shit, but I'm in attendance quite frequently. It just so happened to be that Joey got to go to the Kansas City game and I wasn't in attendance. So don't conflate that with like one or the other. Paul Shatter called it Bo Bueller. Um, Sean Payton and Bo Nix having words on the sideline. At first, I was like, what is happening? It was so animated that you could tell from the stands what was happening there. But it was, I didn't, I guess it didn't so much matter what the conversation was about. It was how the conversation was going down. Sean Payton was getting into Bo Nix, and Bo Nix gave it right back, including a Davis Webb coming over to sort of interject himself. It was an entirely different conversation than what we were having uh last year when Sean Payton and Russell Wilson got into it. And mostly that was one sided. Joey, I would consider this a stock up because it shows the fire of a Bo Nix caring about what's happening as he helms this ship. Do you agree or disagree?
I totally agree. Bree, have you noticed like Taron Armstead, who was an all-pro level tackle under Sean Payton, he tweeted after the game, in quote tweeted that clip of them arguing and said, "Hey, Bo Nix is now Sean Payton's favorite player because of that interaction." I've seen people. Chase Daniel has also said it. Players that have played under Sean Payton have said it. Where I think Sean Payton needs the pushback from the player. Like he's looking for it. He wants the fire. He wants that energy back. I care so much about football. Now show me you do when I yell at you. It was completely different than the altercation that happened with Russell Wilson last year. And it was completely different. Russ didn't really even say anything. Sean got a lot of hate for that. Even to this day, I've been seeing the narrative spread about Russell Wilson and Sean Payton, how much Sean Payton didn't treat Russell Wilson well. But ultimately, like, yes, I think that's fine. It came out in press conferences after that it was over. Hey, Sean wanted that to the boundary, and Bo flipped the play. It was some sort of miscommunication in the huddle, and Bo was trying to make things work fast. The play clock is counting down, and you have to just kind of get something on the field and make the most of it. It ended up just being a drop touchdown. So imagine this: you're a player, all your heart's on the field, right? You are going all out on every single play, like Bo Nix is. You just throw what should have been a touchdown pass, and then your coach comes up to you on the sidelines and is like, "What the hell were you doing? That play was supposed to go the other way." Of course he's going to lose his mind. This is what football is. Like, so much emotion is involved, so much just like emotion is involved, that these type of spats are going to happen. Of course you don't want it to be a super consistent thing, but Bree, you follow the Patriots pretty closely, Tom Brady and stuff. How many times did you see Tom Brady and Josh McDaniels lose their mind on the sideline? It happens.
It happens a lot, and it happens a lot between quarterbacks and their head coaches or their quarterback coaches or their offensive coordinators. That is the buy-in that you have, and I think, there is a misnomer that a loud voice is somehow a wrong or a, misguided voice, and I don't think that that can ring true on the football field,
Yeah.
especially when there's heightened emotions and everyone is out there trying to, achieve one goal, which is win. And so yeah, I think last year it really left a different aftertaste than this one. And I, as you know, as I put my fan hat on right now, don't necessarily always have the greatest biases towards a Sean Payton. This rubbed me a little bit differently, and this didn't come off in the way that I thought it would. And it felt good to see that type of interaction. And I feel it truly was a catalyst for what we saw the rest of that game. So, major stock up on what we're seeing as chemistry continues to build for this Denver Broncos team, both for the offense in general, the run game, which we'll talk about here in a second, Bo Nix being able to make something happen. Because in the first quarter, I thought this game was going to be a 9-9 or a 12-12, and it was just going to be an ugly set of circumstances on a very pretty day with a lot of, good things happening. Maybe they could have eked out a win, something along those lines, but the Broncos were able to score 34 points. for the first time since 2021. And a commenter just brought it up, and I failed to mention it to start the show because I was so excited about what I had arranged here. But the streak is over. And after 8 games of having to deal with Raiders dropping in this chat and saying you haven't beat the Las Vegas Raiders yet,
Oh
and
god.
all of
Miserable
that
people,
other
by the way.
stuff, wherever Stacy is, we can't wait to welcome you back with opened arms. I'm glad the streak is over. Last season, the Broncos were able to end the Chiefs streak. Now the Raiders streak is over. I don't think there's a streak against the Chargers because simply they're the Chargers. Joey, let's talk about Bo Nix in general. Coming off of that dust up, what did you see? Let's say from the Tampa Bay game to the Jets game to the Raiders game, what has been the progression there for what you've seen positively from Bo Nix? Are you seeing enough movement from his decision-making abilities to his less amount of flustering or frustrations? Tampa Bay looked great, but it wasn't the best offense that you've seen them roll out. The Jets, 60 yards. We're not going to really use that and lean on that. We've already gone through that, and that blender is dense. But the ability for Bo Nix to do what he did and kind of prove, all right, it was good weather, but there was some flashes of what I think is a serviceable offense. Is that enough going forward to keep them in the? I mean, let's be honest. The Broncos are ranked 5th presently through week 5 in the AFC. Were you expecting that? Because I wasn't. So something's working. Is it enough of Bo Nix's indication that he's the quarterback of the future? Because I don't think he's going anywhere. I know the gimmicky sites and in all of those blogs were, trying to facilitate some conversation that there was even a possibility that Bo Nix wouldn't be the starting quarterback after
Same
2
picture.
wins. But we're on a 3 streak, Joey. 3
Yeah.
win streak. Bo Nix looks good, and he seems to be gelling with Sean Payton. I think those are 3 positives that are rolling forward that are going to come to a head with another AFC West matchup next Sunday.
Yeah. Bree, I think it's all about keeping it in perspective and knowing that this is a long season. We are only a portion through the season right now, a small portion through the season. And we have an entire year to evaluate a Bo Nix. So there's no need to rush to conclusions. There's no need to be like, hey, this is over now, whatever the case may be, because we have a long season ahead of us, and we're going to get the answer, or I think a more clear answer if you just wait 3 weeks. If you wait another 3 days, like you just have a little bit more time. I don't see the need to come out and be like, hey, this is concerning. But D-Bronx mentioned it earlier. I think the most weird thing with this whole Bo Nix situation is just the first half versus the second half stuff. I don't know what's up with that. You would figure with Sean Payton and Bo Nix, he would work so good on a script. Every offense should work better on that first script. The Broncos offense really hasn't, and then carried on from that, just not looking good to the point where really, Bree, if I'm being honest with you, it looks miserable a lot of the times in these first half. This passing offense looks miserable. It's been really healthy to see this run game improve over these last 2 weeks. Zach has a really good stat on this. It's a missed tackle rate that Javonte Williams has produced over these last 2 weeks that is super exciting. But it is concerning. I don't know what's up with that. They're going to need to find more level somehow or some way. I do want to reiterate what I started with, that we have a long season to figure this out and get better. Something positive, I'd say, I think Bo Nix throws that back shoulder fade really, really good. We've seen that multiple times this season. If he sees Court one-on-one on the outside, he's been on the money with that back shoulder fade this year. I think he's also thrown some really good dig routes. When he gets to it, getting to it is something he needs to work on. But I think there's plenty to be optimistic about. It's just getting it all together. That's my main takeaway there. And honestly, this offense evolves, Bree, if it gets a little better, even to a point where it's slightly below average, the Broncos defense is good enough to get in the playoffs. So it's just these are nice to get wins in these weeks where the offense looks miserable, because if it ends up evolving, the Broncos could be playoff bound. So that's something to keep in mind. I wouldn't put my money in it, but if the Broncos offense starts to look better, evolve a little bit, chemistry improves, Bo Nix looks a little more comfortable, hey, this could be one of those teams where it's scarier towards the end of the season than beginning of the season. So it's nice to see these wins now.
In like a lamb, out like a lion, Jason Bonney says, Bo Nix is getting more and more comfortable, and that is exciting. Jason, it is really exciting. I wish it didn't take so long to get there. I wish it didn't take a catalyst to get it going and get to I hate this saying, get the juices flowing. Like, why isn't there some ferocity to start? I'm not going to blame the gospel music, but I would listen to something different and see if it sparks anything. Or I don't know, take the Goldberg route and smash your head off of a door before you go out onto the field. Don't do that. That'll cause a concussion. That won't be good for anybody. You'll be in protocol for a week and a half, and it will not be any good. Atomic 626 coming in with the I think we're pretty playoff bound. Every team underneath us in the AFC looks downright awful. Yeah, Joey, there's some surprising teams that are just having a really tough time at it. Mostly, I think like the Bengals being so far down is
Yeah, their
is
defense.
shocking.
Yeah, no, Joe Burrow has really picked it up. Joe Burrow looks good. I see a lot of people tweeting that Joe Burrow looks bad. And I'm like, what are you guys talking about? Joe Burrow these last few weeks has looked really good. That defense can't stop anything. To the main point that the Broncos are playoff bound, they do hit like a rough spot here. The Broncos clearly do have a shot against the Chargers and Panthers, like Saints. Hey, who knows? But the Ravens, Chiefs, Falcons, that's a tough stretch. Then the Browns defense is no joke. Colts could be a tough one. You got the Bengals, and then you got the Chiefs again. Who knows how this all ends up? That's kind of why you're hoping you are getting these wins now, because it does get tough. Like midway through the season, you get a nice little 3-game stretch of tough games there.
Well, I think that's why we were talking about how kind of scary hours it was going to be seeing that stretch. I didn't see it playing out this way. I'm glad that it has, and keeping it rolling with the Chargers would be immaculate. But 4 straight wins, that feels like a streak I wasn't anticipating. So we'll see how that pans itself out. We'll be doing predictions, as I already mentioned, on Wednesday. You don't want to miss this Tuesday's episode with Altitude Adjustment, Mario Vitanzi and Patrick Chiodo. And then Friday, I believe we have Full Field Read. Is that correct, Joey?
Yep, every Friday, Full Field Read. They're doing a terrific job, by the way. Shout out to them. If you guys haven't checked that out, they are, and you're a football junkie, I don't know what you're doing, and this is not a paid advertisement. Breaking wrong, aren't paying me. It's one of my favorite shows, if not my favorite show to watch, because they're literally breaking down the film live with the people, breaking down every single play, showing how it works. And you guys are actually going to be able to say, Sean Payton calling the plays right, or is he not? Did Bo Nix miss a throw, or did he not? You're going to be able to have like a real life opinion on it after they're showing the all 22 film, breaking down what the concept is, etc. It's great stuff.
It is great stuff. Joey, thank you for that highlight reel on Full Field Read. We'll have to do one for Altitude Adjustment, but Muse takes care of that in his own. Big fan of the program, and we're a big fan of you, Muse, so thank you so much. Where was I going with that? One may never be sure. You got the Chiefs and the Saints tonight. Am I remembering that right, Joey, for Monday Night Football?
I think so. Jesus. Yep, I believe so. Chiefs and Saints. Yep. You're going to get to see Kubiak, who was the play caller down here. Does anyone remember that? Kubiak, when he took over the play calling for a little bit and the Broncos offense didn't get any better. Well, now he's with the Saints, and he is a head coach candidate, it looks like, at the end of the season.
When all is said and done, it'll be interesting. Joey, if you could think off the top of your head, who's in the hottest seat here in the NFL in a head coaching job?
Oh, my gosh. Doug Peterson with Jacksonville. That's
really ahead of like Salah and Sirianni.
Yeah, I mean, Salah's right there. Stefanski's right there too, because all of his eggs went in that Deshaun Watson basket. But man, have the Jacksonville Jaguars underperformed. they've underperformed. They have their quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, who I think gets hated a little too much. That team just folds. Like that's the issue with it. And that is coaching to me. If you have leads or and stuff like that, or even if you don't, if you get behind, you fold. If you have a lead, you fold. This is on coaching. This is on coaching. You look good for huge portions of the game, and then what do? Time in, time out. It's not just one season. We're going into multiple seasons of this. You fold. This is coaching. I love Doug Peterson, the play caller. If he wanted to be an offensive coordinator somewhere, I'd pay him a shit ton to do that. I just don't think he's head coach material anymore. It's getting spooky over there in Jacksonville. I think right now they're supposed to have a top 2 pick. That team's too talented to do that.
The way that you just put that, Joey, I think that that's kind of the emphasis of where there was so much of a conversation of the combination of Doug Peterson and a Trevor Lawrence being just absolutely gold standard. The fact that it's become so dire, there has to be an explanation for it. It can't just be that the Jags have fallen this far. Yeah.
Speaking of coaches, Bree, here's something I want Broncos fans to keep in mind, right? It felt like it was kind of swept over under the rug in the offseason. The Broncos made a very, very interesting DB coach hire this offseason. If you guys aren't familiar with it, it's Jim Leonard, who was interviewed multiple times for defensive coordinator jobs around the league. He's coming from the collegiate level, most known for his work at Wisconsin when their defense was really good, and he was the defensive play caller down there. They made a really interesting hire, hiring him as their DB coach. I think he finally took an NFL job because of how the transfer portal and the NIL is getting in college football, Bree, where, honest to God, it's just a lot harder to coach in college football than it is the NFL in today's world because you have to recruit all of these players every single year. They might redshirt in the middle of the year, whatever the case may be. So finally, Jim Leonard makes the jump to the NFL. It just so happens to be with Sean Payton. Jim Leonard's defense is very similar. It's under the Rex Ryan tree. Who did the Broncos interview for defensive coordinator? Was Rex Ryan during a part. It sounded like it didn't go through because Rex Ryan wanted some money the Broncos weren't willing to offer, or at least through Rex Ryan's perspective. But if the Broncos keep this up on defense, right, looking how as good as they are right now, we mentioned it earlier, Riley Moss looks so good. No one expected the Broncos defense to look as good as they are right now. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility where Vance Joseph gets hired as the head coach at the end of the season because of the Rooney Rule or whatever. The Broncos pick up 2 third-round picks in that scenario. And then they already have their defensive coordinator, who, as I mentioned, has been interviewed for multiple defensive coordinator jobs going up to this spot, gets promoted, and your defense is kind of just like, hey, we have our defensive coordinator. We just picked up draft picks. I wouldn't be mad at that situation for the Broncos whatsoever. Honestly, I think if the Broncos don't promote Jim Leonard this next offseason, he'll go be a play caller elsewhere. Just something to keep in mind if you're a fan in the chat right now.
Yeah, well, the chat seems to be following your lead. They also agree that Vance will get the head coaching position somewhere and Jim Leonard will need to be promoted up. And that's the kind of continuity that I prefer. If you can keep that perpetual play game plan in action for the defense. We saw it with the Christian Parker turnover and kind of how much it meant to have your secondary and your linebackers on the same page, that it's really important that you promote within and keep that lineage there. I think Jim Leonard has been a great addition to Vance Joseph.
Yes.
But I want to give them both their flowers in separate bouquets, because I think just handing them over to either of them and saying that that's enough would be ill-willed.
You're right. It's not just black and white. You can't just give credit to one. I think both of them have done well this year. You're right, Brie.
Yeah. I think that that's fair. The last positive that I want to throw out there, I know, wow, Let's Talk Broncos has been really positive for a really long time. We also all picked the Broncos to win. So take that for what you will. Unless you're spite watching us, then I didn't believe it. So I'm just kidding. I did. Uh,
Shout out to the Spite Watchers, by the way. That's something we need to shout out. I love all of it. We're here for it. Thank you for joining us tonight. I love you. So yeah, that's all.
hate views count the same as the other kind. So keep at it. D Bronx wants me to say something negative. Listen, I'm in a good mood. I don't think that you're really going to get a whole lot of negative out of me. But let's talk about how lucky the Denver Broncos were to have 8 offensive linemen available for that game. As Joey, let's take a step back to training camp when the Quinn Bailey injury happened and how kind of uh a fortune telling ominous that injury was for how this was going to be a domino effect for the Broncos, their line and injuries. Because the positive that we didn't get to highlight increasingly so was the run game. And I think that we need to highlight that as starting to catch some fire, starting to have some speed there. Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin, Marvin Mims got in on the action. Bo Nix obviously out there with his legs getting downfield, but you don't have an offense if you don't have a line. And McGlinchey with the injury and Powers being injured and Quinn Bailey being out and maybe he plays football again. To Palczewski having a ankle sprain to Bowles almost losing his leg out there. Like there's a little too much going on. And I'm a little nervous for what it means. And I did also learn that you would just like shoe in a tight end at guard if you ran out of suited up linemen. So that's interesting to me. Run it as is and hope for the best. Joey, the O line in general, concerns there. Oh, Wattenberg too. Like, how am I forgetting? Because they all happened at the same time at the same game, and it's very, very concerning. But how is that going to harm the offense and the progression that they're trying to make on any sort of momentum when you don't have a line protecting your quarterback?
Yeah, please God, some of these guys be healthy. Please, please, please. Like that was another thing that was kind of swept on the swept on the rug this last week. Palczewski got hurt, as you mentioned, in that. Like you are playing guys in places where you really don't want to play them. Like Matt Pert this preseason looked like a pretty good tackle. If you want to play him in those power formations, which has kind of been a Sean Payton staple since he's been the head coach of the Broncos, hey, we're going to bring an extra offensive lineman in. They probably do that more than any team in the league, honestly. Is that just wiped out of your playbook now? Like that's a staple kind of to this offense because of the injured players. Do you just have to? You probably just have to take that out. Like that's not part of your playbook. All of those plays where you wanted to bring an extra offensive lineman in, I don't think you could run it if these tackles are all hurt. You're talking like it's bad news. That's not a good thing. So yeah, I mean it is a big deal. I don't think you can just move offensive linemen around so easily, where you're just playing a player somewhere.
Joey, wait, I got to interrupt you there. Let's talk about that though. Why
Yeah.
is it so increasingly common for someone to say, well, you'll just plug the right tackle into the left tackle, or you'll
Yeah.
just slide that guy over? That's not. I remember Calvin Anderson telling us that it was like writing with your other hand in a non-dominant sense of your other foot is now leading the charge. Like it's a complete, you're mirroring everything. And I don't know why it's so commonplace. I understand if they played a little bit in college or maybe they started their career, but you can't just plug and play these guys. Okay, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just wanted to
No.
emphasize where it's not that easy. And that's why developing offensive linemen and being able to have that depth that you have, especially on the practice squad, like it should be a continuous rotating endeavor to find individuals who are at the level that will not skip a beat when it comes to that line as a unit, and also as their assignments. So go ahead, continue.
I think you said it perfect. It's like Yeah, guys have to think like, okay, so instead of my right hand in the dirt, my left hand's in the dirt. Everything's opposite. Everything's opposite of how you've been trained. Matt Pert played he played left tackle and left guard this entire preseason. Like asking him to go over on the right side and be effective where now my left hand's in the dirt. Like everything's way different. Everything's completely different there. And it's flipped. I don't think people really realize how technical offensive line is. A lot of fans just think it's big guys running into each other. Like, let me just get this big guy and put him at offensive line. It's really, really technical. It's super technical. I have to make everything be the same on every single rep. It's really hard. I need to have some people don't credit like things that some offensive linemen have things in their bag. Like, hey, I might show a hand, you show your move, I'm on you now blocking. There's a lot of technical things that go in the offensive line. Honestly, on that tackle position, I probably put it right under corner and right next to, or right under quarterback and right next to corner is the most technical position you have, most technique driven position there is on the football field. So I think you bring up a really good point there. It's hard to ask offensive linemen to just say, hey, you were playing left tackle, go play right guard. That's unrealistic. It's not true. Even from a body size part, like I don't want my right guard playing left tackle. I don't want my left tackle playing right guard. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And the chat is bringing up the idea that Cam Fleming is familiar with the Broncos. So that's good for scheme fits, maybe a few more snaps. Maybe there's been some progression from last season. Throckmorton is ready to get promoted to the game day roster. Yes, absolutely. I love this comment from D Bronx, although he has angered some people in the chat. They should move O-line around the formation like volleyball players between sets. As a former player and coach, I think that would be hilarious if you just started rotating. But again, that's formation wise, and then you're always running, you're always motioning back to your original position. So the idea there is not, I'm not playing center or middle and right and left and back. I guess what I'm trying to say is technically I get what you're saying, but also I would have been switching before the ball is as the ball was served. I know I get very literal, but I just wanted to.
We just have everybody going left every drive. Like left tackle plays right tackle. It just keeps going down. That'd be hilarious.
Paul Hill said Parham should be ready to go. I hope he starts against the Chargers. Who do you guys trust at right tackle and left tackle in next week's game against Los Angeles? Joey.
I mean, I think it's kind of set of what it has to be. I think because you played Parrott so much during the preseason and everything like that at left tackle, I would play him at left tackle, and we got to try Crum at right tackle. That would be the way to do that.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer there. Won't know till you try it out, see if it works, and then you have to make some diagnostic changes moving forward, or the car falls apart and the QB gets sacked. Don't want to see it. Really surprised Max Crosby didn't have 10. Was really, really worried about it. But you know what? We're on to the next one. I wanted to bring up one other thing that I think is a negative that we have to kind of cap tonight's show off on. Greg Dulcich was a healthy scratch.
Yeah.
Sean Payton had mentioned, Fanatic Dak wants to bring up the Wattenberg butt fumble. We should have tied that into the O-line talk. But
that was crazy.
That was nuts. I wasn't sure what happened. So when I saw the replay, I was confused.
I did that once in Little League football. I think I was probably like 7. I literally did that exact play at center. I feel you.
Like, when did you play center? That's amazing.
I did play center when I was AYL age. I did play center. I did that exact play. You would think, Bree, that the feeling would be a little different from shotgun to under center. Like, I don't know, especially just having so many games under your belt. Like, hey, you've been playing this since you were 6.
Yeah.
What
he felt something. He felt something. And It wasn't what he thought it was, I guess.
I just don't know what the hell happened on that play. I would love to know
Terrible.
what was going through Wattenberg's mind. Anyways, that's all.
Yeah, when it's less fresh, I'm sure we'll get some sort of feedback on that. But Greg Dulcich being a healthy scratch is interesting considering the words from Sean Payton were trying to facilitate a role for Dulcich. And before it was the Joker and a role was already outlined. And then it's turned out that Dulcich may or may not be very serviceable as a blocker. And that is going to come to haunt him unless there is some improvement there. That has been the case, though, for a couple of seasons now, and it seems now that it's affecting the ability to dress and start Greg Dulcich. Is the story over for the tight end? Is 80 going to continue down that route? Because it's not even injuries now that are keeping him off the field, it's game plan. That to me is a tremendous stock down, and it may spell kind of the downturn.
Yeah, he's just been like a really big negative in the run game every single time. The way you have to think about this is really, would we rather have that tight end who can't block out there or another wide receiver? That's kind of how you have to value those type of players. If you can't block, are you a good enough receiver where I would rather have you out there than an actual wide receiver? That's the way you have to do it, because no one's worried about Greg Dulcich in the run game. Nobody. And he is really talented. Bree, we saw him in training camp. We saw him in his first year.
We've seen it. We've also seen wide receivers be talented too. And just like you said, I wouldn't want to trade that out for that necessarily, unless he's planning on making that transition. Maybe those conversations are being had. We did see him lining up in a way that would suggest that
He's
wide out is a little bit of a better call, but
yeah, he's really a big slot. That's really what he is. And that's what we should consider him, because he's not bringing anything in the blocking game to this point. But he's getting demolished blocking game. That's why you're not seeing him play. Is it over? I don't know. Maybe he goes to a different team where they more want a skill set like that and he's able to make it work. I just never understood the Joker thing, because typically that Joker player was, hey, it's Reggie Bush, it's Darren Sproles. It's one of those type guys. The tight end he had was Jimmy Graham, like that, or Jeremy Shockey. It was these guys. It wasn't the Joker. Didn't really apply to those. They were just really, really good tight ends.
yeah, absolutely. I love this comment by D Bronx. I think part of his problem is that his real strength is running up the seams, an area of the field Bo doesn't seem comfortable throwing. Maybe yet. And maybe my premature curtain call and waving the white flag is very simply just that. But until I see something different, I did not feel good about a healthy scratch. I saw him not dressed, and I went to go check what of the bevy of injuries was flaring up this time, and to see that it was none of them was just, I don't know. It was a little unsettling, but it was exciting to see Marvin Mims, Little Jordan Humphrey, Franklin, Reynolds, Sutton all go out there and get targets. So I kind of want to end this on a what we're seeing frame from the receivers and how that either helps or hinders Bo Nix. We saw the drops play a part in this game. I think Bo kind of tried to take the responsibility for that. And at the end of the day, I respect it. But he was pretty on target for what I was watching from the stands. It was a receiver, a drop ball, and a miscommunication standard that wasn't being met. Um, how desperate is it that that changes and changes quickly for the offense to keep it rolling?
I mean, hey, here's the way I would look at it, Bree. If the Broncos are serious about saying we're a playoff caliber team, whether I agree or disagree with it, if the Broncos are serious and thinking they are a playoff caliber team, I think they would try to upgrade that wide receiver room come trade deadline. That's my opinion with it. I really do. Like, you should upgrade that if you think you're that good. You have a rookie quarterback. Why not help him up? Why not push your team further into that playoff conversation if that's actually how you feel. So I'm kind of just it's a good way to think about and call their bluff, in my opinion. It really is. If Amari Cooper is going to go for as cheap as I think he's going to go for, he's definitely, if not the best, the second best wide receiver on this football team. And why wouldn't you go out there and get him if you actually think you are worth competing this year? So I do think
Well,
that.
last week, Joey, I didn't
Yeah,
think that was the case. I thought adding it would be frivolous, but I think that I think this is a junction point where what you're saying tracks.
yeah, I think it does. Like the play. Here's the thing, guys. The coaches are always going to tell you they think they're going to win. This is called coach talk. They're always going to tell you the right thing. There's no coach in the NFL that's going to be like, "Hey, this team's not capable of winning," or whatever the case may be. How you call them on their bluff is you see the moves they're making. Show me the actions. So if they actually think they are, you should upgrade that wide receiver room. You absolutely should. Troy Franklin was a guy, Bree. I did not expect him to play much this year. I really didn't. I saw the reason why you drafted him. It's because he's long arms, pretty tall, and then really fast wide receiver, but not very refined in a lot of areas. You saw the drop this last weekend. Drops were an issue in college. It followed him over the training camp, and then you saw it in the game. I think that's kind of an indication of just the Broncos wide receiver room and kind of what you're lacking there. We're so desperate for a player that we're playing a guy that's not really ready. He made plays, and he's a promising player, very promising. I just don't know if he's ready right now.
And on that note, we'll get you on out of here so you can enjoy Monday Night Football. MJB said, "How thin is the O-line depth all of a sudden?" Thin.
Very
Rewind. Watch the end of
razor.
the show. We talked about it. Razor thin, if you
Yeah.
will. Fine as hair. We're gonna get you out of here. We'll be back on Wednesday as a trio. Maybe if Zach Sears shows up. I don't know anymore. He doesn't text, he doesn't write, he doesn't give us a schedule. We just have to guess. And you almost got a show at 6 p.m. So Joe Burrow just said Kansas City just scored. So that's fantastic. Tune in tomorrow if you want to get your attitude adjusted with the Altitude Adjustment podcast. Mario Vitanzi and Patrick Chiotti. We'll see you on Wednesday. Full Food Read is later on this week. And have yourselves a great evening. Go Broncos.